Welcome to this special anniversary episode of the One Day at a Time podcast. My name is Arlena and I'll be your host. I'm doing a solo episode today. I'm actually going to publish this on YouTube as well. Not that you need to see me, but I wanted to share with you. It is my sobriety anniversary on April 23rd. So, depending on when you're listening to this, it'll be coming up or it'll be just past. So, so my anniversary is April 23rd of 1994. And that feels like 27 feels like a really big number. I was 25 when I actually got sober. So I'm now sober longer than I was when I first started. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh. So I thought it would be fun and maybe helpful to talk about lessons I've learned on this 27th sober anniversary. One of the things that has, transpired this year is that I have finally realized this dream that I had for probably the last 15 years. I always wanted to own my own business. So this last year of COVID, I actually left corporate, sort of. I left. They asked me to leave. I got laid off, which was actually a really good thing. Funny story. I totally am obsessed with the laws of attraction. And all of 2020, my work computer password was new job 2020. And I got laid off in December of 2020. And it happened, it was actually a good thing. Earlier in the year, maybe it was even the year before, I had this coach that was like, write down the amount of money that you want to make it a stretch goal, something that's believable, but would be an incredible stretch, something that would prove to you that the laws of attraction really work. And so I picked this number. I thought, there is no way with my current circumstance, enterprise security sales, and the patch that I was in and the things that I was selling, I was like, there is no way that this number is going to happen. So he's like, but put it on a sticky note, write the number down, put it on a sticky note, put it in your line of sight, and your subconscious mind will figure out how to make it happen. Your job is to just focus on the number and feel the feelings as if it's already happened. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll play along. I'm into laws of attraction. I understand quantum physics, how what you think about, you bring about is kind of the essence of it. And COVID hits and I sell VPN, which allows people to work from home. So virtually every single customer I had to make a purchase in 2020. So I made the most money I ever made. Our company did so well. They got acquired and they laid off the entire inside sales team, which included yours truly. And I could have probably stayed because I was the only one on my team that wasn't a convicted felon. It's a long story. The company I worked for employed women that were transitioning out of the Arizona correctional facility. It's a great company, and it was like a second chance program type situation where they trained them to work in corporate and in sales, and it was an amazing company. But I was the only one that was on the team that didn't have a record, but I didn't call it to their attention because I wanted the 2 months paid and the big fat severance check. So that's what I did. I took the exit package and started my business. And I am now doing what I feel like is my soul's purpose. So I work for myself. I have an amazing set of clients. I put my head on the pillow every day, just so grateful that I am doing the work that I love, that I feel like I'm meant to be doing. So I'm super grateful for that. That was probably the biggest change this last year. But I wanted to share some other lessons. I published an episode recently onto YouTube. It was about a fear setting exercise. So I'm not going to go into the whole fear setting exercise again. I will leave a link to that video with the worksheet and everything. But the idea behind the fear setting exercise came out of one of the things I learned this year was about the default mode network. It's a neural collection of pathways that are established in our brain. It's like your default, it's like everybody kind of lives within this default mode network. You don't get too high, you don't get too low. It's like a thermostat. We kind of live in this comfort zone, and it's your brain's way of being efficient. It's like a computer operating system, and it's based on the idea. I actually teach a whole self-esteem class around it. The idea is that we only allow into our lives what we believe we deserve on a subconscious level. It's all about identifying and reframing limiting beliefs. But this default mode network is really interesting. It's a neuroscience term. And it's sort of like most people just operate on automatic pilot. Most people are not intentional about how they live their lives. And recovery is a lot about, being intentional, like waking up to the fact that, our brains are in control of our lives, and that we sort of need to take the reins and be more intentional about how we live our lives. So when we are trying to break out of this default mode network, a lot of fears come up. And so that's why I did the fear setting exercise. And the fear setting exercise has a lot to do with identifying worst case scenario. Like, if you want to make a move or you have a goal, what is the worst case scenario? If you're facing some fears, what is the fear? What's the worst thing that could happen? And then coming up with like a contingency plan. Well, if there's 3 of the worst things that could happen, what could you do to either avoid or minimize the damage? And it's been a very practical way to, get all the fear out of my head and onto paper, and then come up with a plan so that if the worst thing did happen, that I was prepared and I could either mitigate or minimize the damage. And then it was really about focusing on, what is the benefit of taking action, and what's the cost of not taking action? That's a big one. So people that are trying to get sober, it's like, what is not getting sober costing you? What's it costing you in relationships and job opportunities, in health, just all that kind of stuff. So the whole fear setting exercise, I would encourage you to listen to it. It's based off of a Tim Ferriss TED Talk. And I took the talk he created. He suggests doing this writing exercise. So I put it into a worksheet. So I'll leave a link to the fear setting exercise and the worksheets and the TED Talk in the show notes for you to refer back to. So that was one of the things that has really been on my mind this last year, really trying to help people, identify what their default mode network is, what their beliefs are, limiting beliefs, and how to reframe that to have the ability to up-level your life, right? Recovery is about up-leveling your life. It's really not about what you're stopping. It's not about an ending. It's about a beginning. I love that about recovery. And, one of the other things that I really have been focused on this year is turning defects into assets. I know a lot of people bristle at the idea of character defects, but it's really just about human frailties, right? It's about the human condition. We're all doing the best that we can with the information that we have. And so the idea is that the universal laws have been set up to support us, but we don't know how to use them correctly. For instance, we are actually living in the residual of all of yesterday's thoughts and actions. Yesterday, they say the National Science Foundation did a study. They showed that the average person has between 60,000 and 80,000 thoughts per day. And 95% of those thoughts are the same as the day before, and 85% of those thoughts are negative, right? So we have this, our brains have a propensity for a negative bias, meaning we tend to ruminate on the negative. And we do that out of survival. It's our brain's way of keeping us safe, because back in the caveman days, we had to be aware of where the danger was so that we could survive. So it's a survival skill, but it doesn't really help us when we're trying to intentionally live a positive life, right? So we just need to be mindful of our brain's tendency to focus on the negative instead of the positive, because what we're trying to do is create a new life, right? create a new identity and create a better life for ourselves. We are always evolving or devolving. So I think it's important to consider the idea of taking control of what you put into your brain, because our brains are like a biofeedback computer. Whatever you put into it comes out. So, yeah, so the turning defects into assets. So I just had a call with a client and she was talking about her obsessive thinking. And I thought, you know what, let's not fight against the brain's tendency to have obsessive thinking, but why don't we use it to obsess on something positive? So I had her do one of my favorite exercise, which is the perfect day exercise. And this is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And what would you do if money were no object? You know, where would you go? What would you do? Where would you be? Who would you be with? And the idea is that you describe your perfect day in as much detail using all five senses as you possibly can. And I've done this exercise many times with students from my class or coaching clients. I've done it myself a bazillion times. And there are different kinds of perfect days. There's like a perfect work day, there's a perfect vacation day, there's a perfect retirement day. You can use whatever you want. But the idea is that once you have your perfect day written down, then why not use the tendency to have obsessive thinking to obsess on something positive? And the idea is that, what you think about, you bring about. It's like, the law of attraction is based on this idea that we are attracting to us or repelling at the level of energy. And so we need to match the level of energy of what we want to create. So for instance, if you're perfect, for me, it's like, oh, my perfect day would be like, in all honesty, like every day has been amazing since, we moved into our dream home and now have my dream job. And so my perfect day is largely about connecting and providing value and feeling like the things that I create have an impact on people. And that's what fills my heart. And being financially rewarded is a material symbol of providing value. So it's not really about the money. Don't get me wrong. I love the money, but it's not really about the money. It's more like a game. It's more like an indicator of the value that I'm delivering. So the idea is that when you have your perfect day, you take a few minutes every single day to imagine the feelings as if it's already happened. And why not? The idea is that we are already doing it. So we might as well, by ruminating on things that didn't work out or obsessive negative thinking, we are just feeling the feelings of feeling bad. And it's not something that's actually happening. So often we get into this space where we are obsessing negatively about something that hasn't even happened. Right. And so why not, if we're going to live in fantasy land, why not fantasize about something positive? Right. So it's like creating a future self. What would you do? Who would you be? Where would you go? All that kind of stuff. So the perfect day exercise, and then using your powers of creative visualization and feel the feelings as if it's already happened so that you can manifest your goals, manifest the shit out of your life. You're doing it anyway. So why not use these principles in a way that's going to benefit you? So that's another thing that's really been on my mind this last year of recovery. The other thing that has been really big for me this last year is I have just been obsessed with self-esteem, because like I said before, I really believe that we only allow into our lives what we believe we deserve on a subconscious level. So I actually hired a hypnotherapist. She was actually one of I forget which episode it was. I'll leave it in the show notes. Kimberly Lorenz. She was my hypnotherapist. We did hypnosis. I'm not sure if she's considered a hypnotherapist or hypnotist, but it was like a guided meditation that it was so amazing. my father died a year ago, and I really haven't talked about it a whole lot. But when he passed away, I didn't feel super sad. I mostly felt relieved, and I felt so guilty about it, to be honest. But in my mind, like, he was sick, he was almost 85. And, you know, I had felt for a very long time that he got stuck in his earthly personality, that he had a closed mindset. He's a really good dude. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to disparage my father, but he definitely, like all of us, had some limitations. And, you know, so when he passed away, and he had been sick with, he had like AFib and kidney disease and Parkinson's, and, he had a lot of issues. And so when he passed, I felt like he was free of his earthly personality. And so I didn't feel super sad. I felt relieved, but kind of guilty that I wasn't like super mourning. But then when I did the hypnotherapy, that was really actually when she helped me to process his death, and I got to say goodbye to him, and I got to let go of some of the negative thinking, like the self-doubt I feel like came from my dad in a lot of ways. He had this idea that he was always playing devil's advocate to help me with my critical thinking skills. I think that's what was going on. I know he didn't do it to hurt me, but it created a lot of self-doubt. Like, I doubted myself for a very long time. Of course, I still do have self-doubts. I'm only human. But doing the hypnotherapy got to those subconscious beliefs about who I thought I was, what I was capable of, and what I deserved. And it was so amazing to be able to let a lot of that stuff go. So, really addressing those subconscious beliefs, identifying them and reframing them, and letting go of what no longer served me, so that I can really embrace the things that were important to me, right? Like creating a life of purpose, living in alignment with my soul's purpose. One of my favorite prayers this year has been, God, direct my thinking, that you use all that I am, all that I hope to be, for a purpose greater than myself. And so I really feel like that's what's happening this year. Is I have realized that dream, and it feels amazing. So yeah, we're just really starting to utilize the transforming, like, so-called defects into assets. So really, turning the obsessive thinking into creative visualization, so that I can manifest a lifestyle that I always wanted to create. And if I if I can do it, you can do it too. And let's see, the other couple exercises I wanted to share with you is about knowing your why. So for me, recovery has been about, not so much, it has nothing to do with the drinking, actually, oddly enough. Um, in the work that I've done, it has very little to do with the alcohol, and everything to do with my thoughts, my beliefs, and my feelings. And as I learn healthier coping mechanisms, I left the compulsion to use, left me a long time ago. But it was because I had a sufficient substitute. I started feeding my brain all kinds of good stuff. The 12-step programs was amazing. Still love it, still recommend it. I realize it's not for everybody. There's some people who have like religious trauma. It doesn't sit well with them. The idea of, that there's something wrong with us, that we're broken, and that we need to be made, better, I guess is, some people have a hard time with that. I was lucky enough that when I first got sober, I was desperate to be different. And so I was willing to go along with whatever they told me to do. And so I didn't really have a problem seeing that obviously my behavior, I was the common denominator in all these situations. So I really didn't have a problem with the idea of character defects. I hated who I was. I wanted to be anybody but me. So when they said I had to change everything, I was like, sign me up. there's nothing that I want. But what I've learned now is that there was nothing wrong with me. I wasn't broken. It's like I was suffering from, a dopamine reward system that was skewed, to put it mildly. I had lost the ability to choose whether I was going to drink, because I had so much emotional baggage that drinking was my only coping mechanism. I didn't have any healthy coping mechanisms. So being in sobriety and learning all kinds of other healthy coping mechanisms was key for me to stay abstinent. And now I just can't even imagine, putting that kind of poison in my body anymore. And, I realize that a lot of people are not comfortable sharing that they're in recovery, but, it does feel like a coming out process, like an ongoing coming out process, because you get a feel for who you can say what to. So I don't share everything with everybody, but these days I don't have to hide who I am. I don't feel any shame about my past addiction and some of the behaviors that I practice, because I have a lot of compassion and empathy, not only for myself, but for others. And I have learned that you can't escape the same measuring stick that you judge others by. So as I learned to have compassion for myself, I learned to have compassion for other people. I realized that we are all doing the best that we can with the information that we have. And although it's not my fault, it was my responsibility. So I do talk about that a lot to the people I work with. It's not your fault. There's a lot of pressure to drink, which seems crazy to me now. But that's how it is. Even in my profession, people were encouraged to drink at work with customers, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm in complete control of my environment now. I'm grateful that I don't have to be subjected to that kind of stuff anymore. But if you are, just know that you don't have to tell everybody everything, but it's important to tell at least one person what's really going on. So what else did I want to share with you? Oh, knowing your why. So when I first got sober, I needed to get really clear about why it was that I was getting sober, and, doing the step one exercise of identifying, defining really what was powerlessness and what was unmanageability and how it showed up in my life through drinking. It brought me great clarity. And that is true. That has been true for other areas of my life as well. And so that's an exercise I highly recommend. But once I got clear about, how alcohol was affecting my life, it's like I had to get very clear about, why was I doing all this work? And even now, it's like, why do I still continue to make self-care and sobriety my number one priority all this time, 27 years later? Self-care is still my sobriety, and my self-care is still my number one priority. It has to be. It's before my husband, it's before my kids. It has to come first. And it's because I am still fine. We all fight against our default mode network. I don't want to fall back to my old patterns of thinking and feeling. I really want to maintain this healthier lifestyle, but self-esteem is like a muscle. Like you wouldn't go to the gym once and expect to stay in shape forever, right? So that's the same with my self-esteem and trying to break out of this default mode network, because when I stop doing the work, and when I say the work, I mean prayer, meditation, journaling, all that stuff. When I stop doing that, I revert back to like a really sick mindset. My mindset becomes very negative. It becomes very self-centered in like a selfish way, where I'm thinking about, where's mine? What can I get? And then it leads me to feeling all these negative feelings, frustrated, angry, sad, depressed. I just, burned out. I get completely out of balance if I don't do my self-care. And, I don't do it perfectly. Nobody does. Right. And that's the thing, is just doing a little bit of self-care every single day for me has been super important. So my sobriety comes first. And so the why, it's like, why am I doing all this? And I decided to create a one sheet. And this one sheet is based off of the 5 whys. Like, what is your core why? It's like, well, what is it that I want? Well, I want to maintain a healthy level of sobriety. Well, what will that give me that I don't have now? And it's like, well, if I'm sober, then I'm a better use to others. I feel better. And it's like, well, what's important about that? And it's like, well, when I'm of use to others and I feel good, I'm able to, live out my soul's purpose. And so what's important to me about living out my soul's purpose is that it makes me feel complete, satisfied, at peace, content. I'm sort of an achievement, not sort of, I'm a total achievement junkie. And when you're on that hamster wheel, there is no end, there is no finished. And so for me, it's important to notice feelings throughout the day of when I feel finished, when I feel accomplished, and notice the feelings that I want to feel, right? I want to feel at peace. I want to feel joy, contentment, satisfaction. I mean, contentment and satisfaction and peace and joy. That's really my favorite feelings are like inspired and engaged. I'm a seeker. Um, I love all my teachers. I have had so many teachers, from authors to lecturers to sponsors, sponsees. I'm an obsessive learner. There's just so much information out there, and I'm always evolving. And so that's what feels good to me. And so, I'm a just, if something feels good, I'm going to do it. Anything we're doing is worth overdoing, in my opinion. So that is like turning defects into assets. So anyway, I just wanted to share some of the things that I've been thinking about over this last year. 27 feels like a very big number. I feel so grateful to have the support system that I do have. I've invested a lot of time and energy. I do willingness calls, which is I reach out and check in on people. I share a little bit about what's going on with me. And, if the shit hits the fan, which it does on occasion, I have several people that I'm current with, so that if one person's not available, I just keep calling until I get somebody, on the phone, and then talk it out with them. When I'm emotional, my perspective is skewed. And so it's important for me to be able to talk to somebody who's not emotional about my situation, so they can give me a different perspective. And that's true for me. That's true for other people. That's why we need each other. And that's why I love this lifestyle so much, is because we really do help each other along this road, along this journey. And I love that idea that no matter how far down the road you go, you're still the same distance from the ditch. I'm 27, nearly 27 years sober. But I'm still human. I still suffer from sort of that, they call it the isms. People don't like to hear the word alcoholism anymore. It's alcohol use disorder, which I get, like it's on a spectrum. But just for the sake of conversation and ease, it's like I still have all the isms of addiction, right? The obsessive thinking and the lack of wanting to feel my feelings even now. But I've learned healthy coping skills. I've learned to allow my feelings, to acknowledge them, to give them space to evolve and change and resolve. So that's really a lot of the things that I've really been considering this year. I just feel super blessed. I feel lucky. I don't know why I got it and other people don't, but I have really dedicated my life to helping other people, mostly because that feels good to me. Maybe that's selfish. I don't know. But every once in a while, a friend of mine, one of my coaching clients was like, how often do you get notes from people? How often do people reach out to you? And I was like, honestly, not that much. She was like, do you ask people to reach out to you? And I was like, well, no, I guess not. So if you've been listening to the podcast and you have found it valuable in one way, if there is something that you learned, I would love to know what that is. Feel free to email me at arlena@odatchat.com. I would love to hear, what has helped you? What are some of the ideas that from the guests or something I've said? Or I've had so many amazing guests. I feel so thank you to all my guests who have been on, who have shared their stories and their lessons. That's what it's all about. It's about evidence that we can overcome, right? So I would love to hear from you as a present to me Send me a present, send me a note and tell me what has helped you. I would love to hear. And if there is something that you want to hear more of, less of, I would like to hear that too. I want this podcast to be a value to you. Yes, you. And so let me know how I can make it better, keep doing the things that you like. So yeah, 27 years. Thank you so much for my sobriety. Thank you for all the love and support. And until next time, I hope you have a blessed day.